Hi, welcome everyone to Storytime Live. I am Dr. Jennifer Bird. I am a biblical scholar and I care very much about what people do with what they find in the Bible. And today on Storytime, the story is going to be that of my colleague Katy Valentine, part of her personal story. We will also look at one quick story in the book of Acts that is related to the work she has done and that also interestingly connects to all of the things she has moved on from or moved into doing besides being just a New Testament scholar. Some very interesting moves she's made professionally, I would say. So let's bring Dr. Valentine on. Katy, welcome to Storytime.
Thanks. I love it that the intro music was called Temptation March. That feels so great. We're talking about the Bible.
Isn't that great? I know. I was like, well, I know that this is ridiculousness, but it's also, as you said, you chose this music because it's a little witchy, a little
witchy, woo, yeah.
Yes, a little something, something. So let me explain to folks how you and I even know each other. We're both in the same field. We're in the same field of New Testament scholarship, but I met Katy through, she was already on a committee called Gender, Sexuality in the Bible, right? For those watching and watching with us currently and watching later. So yeah, you were already on the committee before I got there. I was invited to join a couple years ago. So I guess you might be evolving off of that committee soon.
Yeah, I've been on it for a long time. Yes. Yeah. Practically running the world on this committee, like the powerhouse that we have. Gender, sexuality in the Bible. We've done it.
Yes, there are some powerhouses on that committee for sure. So the nature, for those watching, the nature of my interactions with Katy have been primarily by email, and maybe one time a Zoom session. I'm not sure. Anyway. Yeah. So we've talked about and we invited papers by people in the field on this topic of gender, sexuality in the Bible, and for the annual conference that we're a part of. So
hey, you're the superstar for the next annual conference.
Oh, that's sweet of you. I'm really excited. Also, kind of like, we'll just see what happens. I'm grateful. That is the bottom line.
Can I give you the free promotional?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think all watchers know, like, Jennifer wrote a book called Marriage in the Bible. Marriage
in the Bible. What do the texts say?
Yes, that one. And we're getting panel of like superstars to do a panel review of it at the annual meeting. So it's gonna be really fun.
It is going to be fun. This book is for a wide range, but a general audience. So there's this part of me that's prepared for the very intense, critical, scholarly engagement with it, which will be fine. I'm preparing my thick skin, and I know that they'll be gracious, but I also know that, it's for a general audience. So we'll see how it goes.
We've got nice people, so it'll be good.
There are. And here's the thing. I just want people to know about it. So that's why this review means so much to me. So anyway, this isn't about me today. This is about you. So what I know about Katy, what I know about you, I realized wasn't a whole lot. So when I went to look it up, I was like, well, okay, I can see that you studied at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, which is, for those interested, it is a very highly respected just amalgam of, kind of a collection of all kinds of religious traditions, having theological seminaries together, and kind of a progressive religious think tank almost, if you will, kind of this really interesting, because it's in Berkeley, great things happening there, really interesting people on faculty there. So I imagine it was an enjoyable time studying there.
As enjoyable as any grad program can be. Yeah, it was good.
Okay. Yeah.
No one leaves grad school and says that was the best however many years of my life. Right? Everyone leaves grad school and says, why did I do that? I just made a horrible life decision. But
actually, that wasn't my experience. But that's
good.
Okay. I had a fantastic. Yeah, I had a fantastic experience. But this is about you. So so GTU. So, and I think I picked up from here and there that you did also study religious studies in undergraduate.
Yeah, so I went to a little bitty liberal arts school called Centenary College of Louisiana. It's in Shreveport, and did you know Centenary? Like, no one knows this place.
No, but I saw the post on your Facebook about Louisiana women don't want to be wined and dined, but daiquiri and crawdad.
Yes, yes,
You're
I did.
Louisiana
Yeah, I grew
either
up there
origin.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I went there. I ended up majoring in sociology, but I studied in the religion department too. And then, what do you do with the religion degree as an undergraduate? You
Right.
go to grad school.
You go to
Grad
grad school.
school.
Yeah.
So
And so you did both master's and PhD at Berkeley.
I did my master's at Garrett in
Oh,
a
good.
Methodist seminary in Chicagoland and
Right.
Evanston, and then went to the GTU.
Right. Okay. And then I pulled from your website. So let me actually just share that for everyone to see. And I have Katie's website and the Facebook group that she leads. If you all are interested in checking that out, those are in the description to the video. I didn't want to leave Facebook open right now, so so I don't have that
That's me.
to show. Yeah. So Katy Valentine, the Reverend Doctor. And the Reverend is within the Methodist Church. Is that right?
No, it's within Disciples of Christ.
Oh, right.
Yeah, yeah.
I knew that, and I had forgotten because you brought it up when you all
No big deal, yeah.
had me on heretics. Yeah. So there's your website, and I hear that there's a bit of a shift here in what
A
you're
little bit
doing.
of a shift, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But the Soul Forge part is really the direction that you're now taking,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, so my coaching company is now called Soul Forge Coaching, and, not all the updates have quite made it to the website yet because life
yes,
still happens, yeah.
it does. But for those interested, that's where I would suggest you go first, and then
Yeah, totally.
yeah. Okay, good. And the Facebook group is the Metaphysical Christian.
Yeah, it's called the Metaphysical Christian, and it's a Soul Forge community. So it is for people who you really like Jesus, but you also like chakras and you want to know how they go together and things like that. And so we're Christo expansive. And so we have a lot of people in there that are maybe working with other energies, maybe outside of the traditional Christian box. And that is like super more than welcome at any place on that spectrum of wherever you may be.
Okay.
The one thing we all have in common is we really like the teachings of Jesus.
Okay, that's where I was going to back up to. You said Christo expansive?
Expansive, yeah.
So centered on the Jesus or the Christ figure, but in lots of different modalities or expressions.
Yeah, lots of different modalities. And like, for instance, because I'm an American, but I live in Ireland, so I tend to just encounter these like ancient Irish pagan energies and welcome them on in. Why
Bring it,
not?
yeah, okay,
So,
bring it
yeah,
on.
so like that kind of thing.
I actually really do want to hear more about that. Okay.
Yes, you can talk.
Yes. All right. So that's the brief intro. Backing up a little bit, if you don't mind, because I
Sure.
did ask you about that, so I know I'm not putting you on the spot here. One of the things I'm doing with these conversations with scholars is asking, who are you? What parts of your story explain your interests now? And one of the first things you said to me was young adult
Yeah.
fiction. And so let's start there, I guess, and then you can, take us wherever you want to.
Sure.
Minerva needs to join us today.
Oh.
She's been cranky lately. I'm worried if there's something wrong. So anyway, she's here.
The goddess Minerva is with us.
Exactly. She is in the house.
Quite welcome.
Yes. So young adult, talk to me. What's the story there? Yeah.
So I can even back up a little earlier. One of my earliest memories is when I was a kid. So I'm old enough so we had cassette players, and before I could read, you would have the storybooks that would go beep to let you know when to turn the page.
Yes.
And I love my Bible ones.
Okay.
I love the Bible story. So I clearly remember this. And one of the stories was about Jesus healing the man who was lowered through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember being like, was warmly comforted or something by that story when I was really young. And I think I had a sense of the divine, in the way that maybe 3 and 4 or 5-year-olds do kind of before they can read. And I remember that distinct presence. And so I always just liked the Bible. I just always liked the stories in the Bible from the time I was really little. I remember getting my first Bible when I was 6 in church, and it kind of mushroomed from there. And so probably as a 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there, those kind of tween and early teen years, my grandma would order me these books from Guidepost. So y'all, the young adult books I'm talking about were published by Guidepost.
Gotcha. Okay.
Feel good little Christian.
Yes.
Are they still around? I don't even know.
Not the books, but I think Guidepost is.
Guidepost, yes.
Yeah.
And so they had this little publishing company for novels. So there would be novelized accounts of biblical women. There was this whole series. There's not all that many. So like everyone got a novel. Like everyone got a novel.
Doesn't take long to get through them all. Yeah.
Yeah. Hagar got a novel. Sarah got a novel. So anyway, but there was a lot of these were really bad. A lot of them were not that good. But there's one author. Her name is Lois Henderson, Lois T. Henderson. I did a little research on her a few years ago, and I couldn't really find out that much other than she had written these. And I think she was like a faithful Presbyterian or something. She would be very elderly now if she's still alive. And so, but these books, I just captivated me. So I would read them. I would read the novelized account, and then I would go to the biblical account because it suddenly became alive in a real way through the novels. Then I would go to the biblical account and compare them. And thus a biblical scholar was born.
Yeah. Yes.
But it caused me to go to do primary research
Right.
at this young age, to go and read. And often I was much more disappointed by the biblical account. The novelized account was a little more sensational.
Interesting. Sensational. Okay. Well, certainly she had to fill in lots of
details and emotions and inner life. And
right. So that was
like
much more interesting. So your first experience with research, right, is also showing you how disappointing the biblical texts can be. Is that fair?
I think that's somewhat fair. And also it taught me, where is this author taking liberties? Where are they filling in? What are the gaps they're filling in?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think one of my favorites was Abigail, the story of Abigail in the Old Testament, who was made the second wife of David, but maybe third wife, whatever, in there. But, her story is only like 2 or 3 chapters long. Like, how do you get a whole novel out of that? But this woman did, and it was quite good. And as an adult, I went back. I do reread them actually still because they're kind of precious memories for me, And when I went back and read them maybe 10 years ago, I thought, oh, these are going to be awful. These are going to be sex shaming, all about accepting Jesus as your Lord and Savior,
right?
And they really weren't. Like there was an emphasis on kind of personal relationship with God, in them. But like other than that, they're very kind of mild mannered. They're just good little novels. I was quite pleased with that. I was happy that that was the author that chose me, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. I like that. Thank you for that.
So thanks, Miss Henderson, whoever you are.
Right.
I don't know much about her.
Right. So you have this early, critical engagement with seeing people in the Bible coming to life, appreciating someone else's creativity along those lines. But also it piques your curiosity or your interest in biblical texts, or no? Was that?
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, absolutely did. Because it made it. I don't want to. I didn't have the feeling then, and I don't now. Like it got me to read the Bible.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like that. It wasn't like a theological sort of, or kind of like a spiritual good that I read the Bible more or something. But it got me to engage with this ancient document that was very, very much alive to me. Yeah. And still is. Like that hasn't disappeared.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it still is. And I still admire fiction writers who are able to do this. I don't really think it's a skill set I have. So I'm like very grateful to novelists for being able to bring this kind of thing to a new life. I mean, much like Chosen is doing now.
I'm not
The Chosen,
the series, the
miniseries. I've only seen one episode, but actually I thought it was.
See, I didn't want to. I was like, sometimes I just don't want to watch those, but maybe I should. Yeah.
Actually, it like got me to see like some ancient Judaism in a new way.
That's great.
That doesn't happen very often.
No, especially since that's kind of been your thing. Did you read like Anita Diamant? I feel like she's one of the early ones. Yeah, I really liked. Liked the Red Tent.
I do. I like the Red Tent. I was super disappointed by the made-for-TV movie.
I didn't even want to go there because
it's bad.
It was but I remember thinking, oh, this is helpful. When I first read it. Yeah, good stuff. Okay,
lots of witchy woo, feminine power in
there is in that. Yeah, the tent, right? The monthly hanging out in the tent together, appreciating women's bodies and their functions. Okay, so then you do the sociology and religion in.
I did, and then sociology. That's also not a degree that you do anything with except go get more degrees.
Yes, exactly. Do you have recollection of why you chose that?
Yes, I had taken yes, I do. I had taken a bunch of classes my freshman, sophomore year just because I was interested in them as electives in like, I think marriage and family and like intro to social work. And when I looked at my degree plan when I was a junior and how many classes I needed to graduate with my religion degree versus my sociology degree, I was like, oh, hell no, I'm doing sociology.
That is probably more common than people realize.
Truth telling.
Yes. So then when you at GTU, you worked on, so your dissertation was on 1 Corinthians 7.
Correct. Yes.
Passage. I'm going to share that just because it's that piece at the very end, right? Of chapter 7.
Kind of in the middle. Yeah.
Sorry, you're right. In the middle.
21.
Yeah. So, but for those watching and here with us and watching later, yes, dissertations can be written on 1 or 2 verses from the Bible. That's actually a thing. And as stunning as it was for me the first time I heard that. So this is a chapter that's talking about sexual practices and
let's talk about sex.
Yeah, it's talking about sex.
Really. Thing. That's what Paul talked about.
Yep. So interesting, right? Since he claims to not be having any, and he's telling other people, giving them advice on sex. I think that's fun. But your passage is here in verse 21, where when you were a slave when called, do not be concerned about it. Even if you can gain your freedom, make the most of it.
Yeah, that's not a good translation.
Not a good translation. Yeah. Would you like to edit it for us?
Yeah, it should say, so that verse is super tricky, and it's been a lot of ink has been spilled about this over the past 2,000 years.
Okay.
Because the Greek is very unclear. So it could also say something along the lines of, were you a slave when you were called? Don't be concerned about it. That part's not tricky. It's this last sentence. It could also say, if you have the chance to gain your freedom, do so and make the most of it. And that's the way I believe it should be translated.
Okay. And in the context of this passage, what importance does that have for people in terms of understanding what Paul might be saying to people?
Right. So why this is important is I think we all know being enslaved would really suck.
Yes, it would. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. Yes.
Then and now, right?
Right. Really it has never been a good thing.
Yes. No. And so Christians didn't really start caring about enslavement until the 1700s. Right. So we have a really, really long history of a really bad history with this.
Right.
But one of the things that slaves did not have any choice over whatsoever was their sexuality.
Right.
Whatsoever. And so we have a lot of sources from the ancient world where maybe a slave is just walking down the street and there's a free person. They don't even know the free person. The free person wants to have sex and they just have sex with that slave.
Mm-hmm.
So there's rampant sexual assault that's happening in the ancient world.
Right.
Because of that, Paul has given all these rules in 1 Corinthians 7 and in other places. We're all familiar with them, right? When to have sex, when not to have sex, when you should have sex, when you shouldn't. If you can control yourself, do so. If you can't, get married. I mean, he really sees marriage as a solution to the problem of not having self-control.
Correct.
So I believe that Paul is encouraging freedom for enslaved people so that they can, in fact, abide by those sexual ethics.
To have some sort of say over their body.
To have some sort of say over their sexuality.
Which is stunning. In that
I mean, if I'm correct, who knows, right? Because this is, like I said, a lot of ink has been spilled over this. If I'm correct, then that's really a marked stepping stone in the path of not only Christianity, but of the ancient world, that someone could kind of make that case. That people should have more control over their own bodies. But Paul certainly makes the case way earlier in 1 Corinthians. He doesn't always, all the time, but he certainly makes the case that wives should be subject over their own bodies.
He did earlier in that chapter.
And so I don't think it's such a leap that he can make the same case for enslaved people, of which we know there were many in these early Christian communities.
Yes, I'm actually thinking, do I need to retract what I just said? When does he say that women have control over their own bodies?
Maybe not control. That might be too strong of a word, but if a man and a woman separate, for a short period of time for celibacy, they can do so, but they shouldn't withhold themselves from their spouses forever, which I just have to say in general is good marital advice.
Yeah, I know, right? Communication. What do you need, honey? Yeah, all that stuff. What's going on?
Good common sense wisdom.
Yeah.
But he says, wives, you can separate yourselves.
Yeah.
Right. You can do that. he doesn't say like you need to do whatever your husband says
Right.
or your man or whoever. Yeah.
Right, and I paused because there is that I think it's verse 3 where it says that you belong to your partner and he belongs to like, he says it both directions
Yeah,
that
there seems to be some mutuality there.
yeah, I do think he was going for the mutuality, not the oppression and the abuse that people have used it to
Yeah,
inflict on each
it's
other.
used horrifically, but
Right, I do think he meant mutuality there as well. Okay, so this is what you worked on for your dissertation. All right,
yeah,
and then
and so you wanna hear a real story, so everyone, this is how grad school and and operate. I was working on verse 21, but, verses 21 through 24.
Mhm.
And it just in my mind, I did the math and I was like, that's 3 verses. 24 minus 21 is 3. And when I sent a
Oh, right.
draft off to my advisor scratched out the first sentence. It was like 4
4
verses,
verses.
21, 22, 23, 24.
Right?
I was like, oh,
Mm.
that seems really obvious, big blunder, sentence 1. The final copy, it's correct. It's correct in the
Okay,
final
good.
copy.
Okay.
Yeah, you get really tunnel vision,
You
is
can.
what I'm saying.
I mean, and it's impressive that we can come up with so much to say over 4 verses or 6, in my case, 6, but yeah,
Seriously.
it is crazy. So then I'm curious about for you because you've had a lot of different things since graduate school, I think,
Quite,
right?
yeah. Yeah, this is year 10.
Okay.
Yeah, this is year 10 since I graduated.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I graduated from finally finished my dissertation, defended it. And I always kind of assumed I would become a professor in a small liberal arts college somewhere. That was kind of what I had envisioned for life. And I'd been teaching in that kind of way for a long time. I really liked it. I liked my undergraduate students. My spouse and I, at the time, he's an attorney, and I was job hunting for a few years, and it was just somewhat draining to do
Mhm.
that.
It is.
And I was kind of getting interviews, but never ever really getting hired. And I just woke up one day and thought, why? Why am I doing this? And those jobs don't pay very well
It's true.
at all. And I thought, I'm going to move us somewhere across the country for a low paying job in this particular climate. Why am I doing that?
Hmm.
So at the same time, like in the mix of all of this, like while I was in grad school and beyond, I had also been studying, might be too strong a word, experiencing going to like classes and groups on all this kind of alternative spirituality because y'all, I was in Berkeley. It's like expected. You have to. This is the place to. This is the
That
place
is the
to
place,
learn
if
about.
ever there was one in the United States.
And I should mention, I was also going to Disciples of Christ Church on Sundays, and I was like very involved in that. And I actually became a candidate for ordination, like somewhere in the middle of all that. So it's kind of doing all these 3 things, like academics, my woo-woo stuff, and then like fairly standard Christian stuff. But we were in Berkeley, and everyone was pretty open to
Experiments and
those kind of experiments.
variety.
And so,
Yeah.
so I was like studying meditation. I was studying chakras. I was boning up on like intuition and what that means, and like doing intense dream work, and so kind of some like psychoanalytic stuff, but also just some like spiritual stuff, and was benefiting from that. It was making my life better, and I was having good experiences with it. And so, 2 years or so after I finished my dissertation, I thought, maybe I'll keep on searching for jobs. I did a little bit, but I thought, I wonder if people want to know about how they can be Christian and also do this woo stuff. And so my coaching was
There are
born.
quite a few people in your Facebook group. Like,
Yeah. We had there at one time there was over 10,000.
Yeah.
I got rid of a lot of the
yeah.
I gently
You let
released some of the people
go.
who weren't participating.
Gotcha, but there's still over 8,000 people
Yeah,
in that
we've
group.
got about 8,000 in there now.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's some people who wanna know what you're
Yeah.
offering, Katy. Yeah.
So hey y'all. Hey, I know some of them are here. Hey.
Yes.
It's good to see you.
That's awesome. Yay.
They're such a fantastic group.
That's great. So, while you're okay, so that was early on. You decided to create your own thing, essentially.
Yeah, I decided to create my own thing.
Okay.
Here we
And
go.
here we go. Okay. Do we
It
wanna
was a terrifying moment to
Yeah.
click publish on the Facebook group
Okay.
because I thought, oh my gosh, my academic colleagues are going to think I'm nuts.
Right.
I'm not going to be respected anymore. I'm not going to be able to write. I'm not going to be able this. I'm not going to be able to find a job. I'm saying no
You
to an
were
academic job.
closing that door to that.
I'm closing the door to that. So it was, like heart palpitating, like I had to really trust all the stuff that I had been experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like click publish.
Right.
So I did. And you know what? I found out that fear was totally unfounded. The vast, I mean, there are some people that are like, what? But
Yeah.
there's people like that anyway.
Yep.
Anyway, so who cares?
And who cares?
The vast majority of people are like, oh my gosh, that's cool. How do I align my how do I do it? Like, how do I align my chakras?
That's awesome.
So, that fear was, it was very real, but it actually ended up not being true. And I've been able to keep my foot in the various worlds that I want to keep my feet in. I feel like I have like 4 feet, not 2. But
Yeah. That's important, right? The things you do care about. Can I ask you to say more about the intuition thing and how,
yeah,
like, what is that? How does that work? We're kind of jumping away from New Testament stuff, and
sure,
that's
yeah.
okay, but we might get back to some other stuff. I don't know, but I think it's on your website. You said something about a child having really strong intuitive experiences, though not having that language yet, or something like that.
Yeah,
And then you
yeah.
just mentioned it again, so I'm curious what that is.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true that was definitely true for me. And so intuition is really I think my definition has changed over the years, but it's kind of a heart sense, an
Okay.
internal sense of being in alignment, of being one with yourself, one with spirit, with the spiritual world, however it is that you see that.
Mhm.
And these days, I would say that it's being, I'm going to go real woo. I'd say it's being at one with your higher, with your higher self and with the divine within you,
Okay.
and letting that guide you and your actions and what's right for you.
Okay.
So most children are actually super intuitive. They don't,
Mm,
like, kids don't have logic skills until they're, I think, like 6 or 7,
at least, yeah.
at least, right? So you never meet a 3-year-old who's like, let me deduce that it's my bedtime and go to bed.
Let me weigh the pros and cons.
Right. They operate on a lot of desire, like whatever it is they
Right.
want, and sugar, but they're
Right.
also very intuitive, right?
Yeah,
Like
right.
small children can often sense when someone is dangerous.
Yeah, they can, actually.
Yeah,
They
or when
can.
something is, when they're in a good environment, when they're in a safe
When they're
environment.
safe, exactly, when they're
Yeah.
comfortable. Mhm.
And so, I think as we get older, most people lose that deep sense of intuition, which is not necessarily a bad thing. We need our logical skills. We need to be able to do taxes. We need to be able to do math, follow the scientific method, like all of that kind of stuff. It requires a different skill set.
Right.
But gosh, I was making decisions for myself in my 20s and in my early 30s that were not in alignment with my intuition,
Okay.
that were that were about someone else's measure of success.
Right.
Yeah, about someone else's
Right.
measure of what would make me happy, of what I should want,
Right.
not tuning into what I actually wanted. And so really developing that intuition has been a big gift. And I think it's an ongoing process as adults. We have to balance that intuition with a bunch of other stuff.
Right, and
Yeah,
just to be very clear, like, some of that is very practical, like
yeah,
making money, supporting
right,
yourself and choosing to be a part of this field that kinda sorta has frameworks for employment, but maybe not great, as you said.
right.
All these different things that go along with that you have to sell your soul and choose where you're gonna compromise your values, or what is important to you. Anyway, so it is complicated. Um, and so I don't want to downplay that part of it. It is a big deal, I think, in this day and age to choose to find a way to honor your intuition and
Yeah.
what you're describing as intuition, this being true to what you are, who you are, and
Yeah,
what
your
you're bringing.
values, your
Yeah,
values, your alignment,
yeah,
your being kind of spirit led,
right.
in a
Whatever
very New Testament sense, right? What does it
doesn't
mean to
need
be
to be right. We can define that in
spiritual?
lots of different ways if we need to, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all available. So yeah, and so I work with a lot of people on in my coaching around developing intuition and honing that, because I know evangelical Christians have been told that their intuition is of the devil, that that's
Yep.
really their own
Right.
desire
Right.
talking. It's
That's
not a real
selfish. Mhm.
thing. It's satanic. And so kind of reprogramming that. I don't even want to use the word programming.
Reframing.
Rewriting that story takes
Rewriting is
quite a bit
good.
of energy.
Yeah. Right.
and it's completely worth it. I haven't worked with anyone that was like, "Yeah, that was a waste of my time." Oh, right. It's not about me, it's about them. Like, oh gosh, right? Because so many evangelical Christians are taught to put their authority in other people's interpretation of the Bible.
Exactly,
Not
and
helpful.
this idea that God is outside of us,
Yeah.
watching us, as compared to being a part of who we are,
Yeah,
and
right.
giving us the life or the inspiration that we have, and whatever. Again, I don't want to step on your toes.
No, no,
I
I think
think
that's
these are
exactly right.
categories that really are much more complicated and nuanced, I think, in helpful ways for people. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Well, you said that you did bring up a minute ago, or when we were chatting ahead of time, the article, the chapter in Acts
Yeah.
as a way to talk about what you're doing now. Is that effective, do you think, to go talk
Yeah,
about that?
yeah,
Yeah,
let's
because
dive into it.
I didn't get a chance to read your scholarship on it,
Oh,
but
no big deal.
I remember you mentioning it before, and just I don't have easy access to Atla right now,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I'm gonna read. We'll look at the story real quick. It's very short. I can't help myself, Katie. I like to read the stories.
Yes.
So, partly because so many people have not experienced people reading scripture well. So that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I started doing the story time to begin with. So this is in chapter 16 of the book of Acts. And you can see let's see if I can scoot that down a little bit. Yeah, Paul and Silas in prison. And the passage that you have engaged are these first 3 verses. One day, as we were going to the place of prayer, we met a female slave who had a spirit of divination and brought her owners a great deal of money by fortune telling. I love that this is an Acts, by the way, because how many Christians are aware that this is just acknowledged as a reality versus
Yeah,
it's not
completely.
it's nobody's upset that that's what's happening. They're
No.
upset about who's getting the money. Uh,
Yeah.
While she followed Paul and us, she would cry out, "These men are slaves of the Most High God who proclaim to you the way of salvation." She kept doing this for many days. But Paul, very much annoyed, turned and said to the spirit, "I order you in the name of Jesus Christ to come out of her." And it came out that very hour. But when her owners saw that their hope of making money was gone, they seized Paul and Silas and dragged them into the marketplace before the authorities. When they brought them before the magistrates, they said, "These men, these Jews are," and that I said that negatively because that's what I think Acts is actually trying to do
Yeah.
here, "are disturbing our city and are advocating customs that are not lawful for us, being Romans, to adopt or observe." The crowd joined in attacking them, and the magistrates had them stripped of their clothing and ordered them to be beaten with rods. After they had given them a severe flogging, they threw them into prison and ordered the jailer to keep them securely. Following these instructions, he put them in the innermost cell and fastened their feet in the stocks. And by the time we get to this, we've forgotten all about the woman who started
Right.
it all. I did that just to make that all clear. So you're talking about this piece up here about the woman and your
Yeah, about
engagement.
the female slave has a spirit of divination. I think you nailed it on the head because you said, no one is seeing this as odd, right? Like this is apparently was common enough that everyone's just, kind of accepting this as
Yes.
part of their daily life.
Yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of the scholarship about this calls her a fake. They call her
Mm.
a horse and pony show.
Mhm.
They call her a charlatan.
Yep.
It's amazing
Very
how
Christian
much
influenced.
scholarship has demonized her,
Yeah.
and I don't say that lightly,
Right, you do mean that
literally.
word. Yep,
Yeah.
and that I mean, can we just are we in agreement here, Katie, that that's probably due to their own coming from a Christian background?
Yeah, coming from a Christian background, and also an assumption that anyone who has a spirit of divination
Uh-huh.
must be
It's crazy.
either possessed by a demon or
Uh-huh.
faking it.
Right. So
And
no sense of this realm of human experience being
yeah, and of
legit.
an authentic
Right,
spiritual,
right,
experience and expression
right. Even
that
though in the story itself, nobody is questioning
yeah, no one.
the reality of this woman's.
And the only reason why Paul seems to cast the spirit out is because he's annoyed.
Right. Not
Because
because she wasn't saying the truth even.
yeah, and she obviously is saying the truth, according to the story, right?
According to the story, exactly. She's actually helping them, but
Yeah.
he's annoyed because she just keeps going after it.
And so this gets even more fun
Okay.
when we can look at the Greek because she is a female slave and enslavement is kind of what I a lot of what I study. And so it's a spirit of divination. It's another way to say it is she has a Pythia spirit.
Okay.
And Pythia is associated with the temple of Delphi, with the Oracle of Delphi in Greece.
Yes.
And so, so a super famous oracle where people went for, it must be like 1,500 or 2,000 years or so to get answers to their questions. And so we have this.
Sorry. When you say 1,500 to 2,000 years prior to Paul.
No, like the total life of the.
So do we have a sense of, but so that happened. But that was pretty, I'm just trying to put it in context for people.
Yeah, very established.
Very early. Yeah.
Yeah, very early, like super established. I mean, it would be like saying the Vatican today.
Right. And people still at this point in time of this story, it's still being consulted.
Daily.
Just making it clear.
All the time. And so it's a really big deal. And so she has a Pythia spirit. So that seems to suggest it's more than just a spirit of divination. It's a spirit that's associated with a very famous oracle and a long line of female like prophetesses.
Okay.
A long line of female oracular diviners.
Okay, that's cool.
It's very cool. And so there's more. This is not a horse and pony show.
Right.
This is an enslaved female slave who has a very particular gift, who unfortunately is being profited on.
Yes. By
her owners, right? So there's a lot of complicated stuff that's going on here. So, everyone is kind of a jerk in this story, except for her. Paul's a jerk. Silas doesn't do much. Paul's a jerk. Her owners are a jerk. The men who throw Paul and Silas in jail are jerks. Like everyone is just kind of a jerk here, except for her. Like, and unfortunately, she doesn't get a whole lot of voice.
Right. She doesn't get much of any, right? Yeah. Just except for what she's saying. Oh, shocker! Are either of us surprised by that? This is the word.
Yeah.
Right, that you're referring to. Yeah. Okay. Just for those who, I know some people that watch this actually do go look these things up. Sweet. I thought I would point that out. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think divination is an incorrect word. It's just not quite as, like, we should really capitalize that P.
Right. Okay.
It's a Pythian spirit.
At the time, people would know that. They'd hear it and they know this is Delphi spirit, but we miss that because of the difference in time. Yeah. We don't know the tradition. And so, it is, again, I would argue, and this is a thing I do on my Storytime Live all the time, Katy, is I point out what I think is a mistranslation that is coming from a particular bias that does serve particular interests. So I was just trying to find them. I have them for when I read biblical passages. So I point out things related to my interests, right? The English actually says wife, but it should say woman. The English says marry, but it should say take, like that kind of thing. And
you can make a new one.
Yes, exactly. I have one about enslavement. So it says servant, but I say slave, enslaved person. And then the husband and wife. Anyway, so we could make a new one here that the spirit of divination perhaps could be a little bit more. There's a different language there.
A little more precise. Yeah.
Give her
gives her some
gravitas. Yes, it does. But again, nobody in this telling of Acts really cares so much about her and her life and what she's actually doing. They're just using it as a way to tell another part of the story about men. Surprise. Yeah. No one's surprised here. Including the people here in our chat, I'm sure, and people watching later, right? So is there more to say there in terms of why that particular passage was of interest to you, why you chose to write an article on it? Or is it just, this is really kind of an alignment of the things that you value?
Yeah, definitely an alignment and a story that I had some interest in. And I find it somewhat popular. Like people really know it and like it. It's this little kind of stands out, I think, in the book of Acts. I approached it from a perspective of disability.
Say more, please.
Yeah. And so my question was because she seems to be unable to control herself.
Okay.
She follows them for days shouting this. That's not making anyone any money. Why is she doing that? She seems to be compelled.
She does
to do this.
She does.
Yeah. So my question was can we consider that a disability? And also what we too often see throughout in the Bible, but other places too, lots of places, is that someone, when they're disabled, as soon as they're healed, or as soon as their disability is fixed, they go away.
They do.
And that seems to happen to her.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I kind of was like at the end of this article, what I said was like, let's not dismiss her in the same way she's been dismissed.
Yeah.
So I like to see her as a really authentic, oracular voice of the ancient world who was, unfortunately put down by the powers of patriarchy. But we don't have to see her that way, right? We can choose to elevate she and her gifts in a very particular way that's so like super woo. Right? She seems to be connected to these energies.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have any there's no reason to doubt that. And it doesn't seem to be like evil in the story. I mean, like the book of Acts, yeah, it is the Bible, right? So they are going to be there's an interest in having all of these people like confess Jesus as savior, right? So but kind of the story beneath the story is that she's the real deal.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't see her in competition with Christ, with God, but in concert.
Right. In this particular instance, she's highlighting a reality about Paul, right?
Yeah.
And Silas.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good way of saying it.
Yeah. Right. So
feminists have been pointing this out for years. Like what Paul did is really a jerk move. He was annoyed. He got rid of her ability to make money for people. And then we don't know what might have happened to her after that.
Exactly. Especially since she was enslaved.
Well for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you talk about the disability, I'm also wondering if you would shift that to neurodiversity today. Like I know that whenever you wrote that, you were thinking disability, but is Tourette like? I mean, why is she so compelled?
Right.
That's partly because of the intensity she's experiencing something inside, but is she neurodivergent maybe? And I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's curious. I'll think about it now. Article number 2. I'll credit you.
Right. Yeah, because I think of the students I've had and their compulsion to say certain things without thinking about it.
Well, and I think there's also a level of truth telling, like for all of us in our lives, where can we be compelled to speak truths that need to be shouted so many times until they're heard?
Okay.
Like what's the truth within us too? So just looking at the story way not in a historical framework or any of that, just it's speaking to us today. Like if the story is speaking to us, like let me just offer like what are our truths that we need to utter
and keep uttering until people hear us. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and then also be careful because the powers that be might just sweep you aside, but you're in good company.
I mean, just from a justice perspective, I'm thinking of things like Black Lives Matter, right? That gets told and told and told until it really, really annoys a lot of people.
And they have to pay attention.
Does that stop the truth from being told? No, I hope not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Let's rewrite the ending there for her in the way it plays out for us today. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing I like to do in my, witchy woo way.
I like it. And you're finding people who want it, who are very interested in what you have to say. It's really great. I like that. Let me see. I'm curious if anyone has any questions for Katy. I have not, just so you all know, I've not been paying attention to the chat because I've just wanted to be present with Katy as we spoke. So if you have questions from earlier, I didn't track with any of it. So please do put your questions in again if you have questions for her.
Yeah, but I can tell you, smart. I'm looking at these comments.
Yeah,
okay,
they are. Yeah, smart people come here. Yeah, it's really fun.
A well-read crowd here. Okay.
Well, yeah, thoughtful people. Honestly, very thoughtful, and a lot of encouragement to each other. I just love it. It makes me very pleased that those kinds of folks show up here. So, I'm not seeing any questions. Someone says they're doing mobility exercises as they listen. That makes me happy because taking care of yourself while you listen to a fun conversation, right? Let's see. Granny from Narnia. And we're going to be discussing gender and how I would be sent to a meat grinder, I think, if we were living in the Bible. Do you know Granny from Narnia? Is that someone from your community?
I do not.
No, okay. I think I may have seen Granny, but yeah.
I'm sorry if you are from my community and I'm not recognizing it.
Yeah. No, yeah. Yes, there are all kinds of realities for the people here, right? All right, let's see. I did see some more comments from the same Granny from Narnia about what was more behind that. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, let's see if there are any questions. I don't think so. Yes, there's one or two. Yep. Great. Thank you, Zelig. That is a helpful comment or question. Katie, can you fill in a little bit? I wish I had a map I could pull up to show where Delphi is on it's on the Peloponnesian Peninsula. Is that right? Or is it above the
It might be in the mainland.
But
can't
yeah.
recall.
Yeah,
Was
yeah.
there once when I was 18.
Yeah, did you? Yes, I drove past it. I didn't get to stop. What can you tell us to fill in a little bit more about this the oracular tradition that she would have been a part of, right?
So for one, it's this place is remote now. It was quite hard to get to, and it's hot and dusty to get there.
Okay.
So you had to be fairly motivated to go there. So yeah, the oracular tradition, I'm going to be speak somewhat generally here. Some of the details may be kind of lost in the ethers of yesteryear, but it's dedicated to Apollo, so to the god Apollo. And the tradition is that there is a snake underneath where the oracle sits, and there's a lot of like kind of imagery, like the snake is filled with the spirit and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And the tradition was always a woman that is the oracle. This tradition is quite long, so it's not the same as when it first began as to when it became closed, which was probably in the 400s, because Christians
did that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, didn't like all these oracles. But always a woman that sat in the seat. And there were like times, they had dedicated times of the day and of the year and the seasons when people could come and ask questions. From kings to kind of everyday people. Like there were lots of different ways that everyday people could maybe access the oracle. Sometimes the woman who was sat at the oracle seems to have been maybe a wealthy high-class woman, like from a high-class family. Other times it may have been a sort of a poorer woman. So I think that changes and shifts over the years. And the actual way that the questions were answered, actually, I don't recall. I think sometimes it might have been just like you ask a question, you kind of get an utterance. But there may have also been other divination tools at play as well. And I can't recall the details if anyone knows.
Sorry about that. I had an interruption there. There may be some comments. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was trying to show on the map that you were right. It is on the mainland. Delphi is northwest of Athens. Here's the Peloponnesian Peninsula. I was thinking of Corinth when I was. I drove right past Corinth, but so Delphi. Sorry about that. I was hoping that was helpful. Yes. So more about Delphi and the connection, just so we're clear, because you were talking about Puthos, and the connection there linguistically is the word Puthos is connected to snake. Is that right?
So the Pythia is the snake, the python.
Right. So wanted to make sure people understood that.
Thank you. Yes, I neglected to.
Yeah, no, it's all good. We're going to jump to a different question, which is Farsight is a graduate student in religious studies, just so you know. So they bring really fun questions and comments. How do you view figures like Mani that try to unite many of the religions of the ancient world into one belief system?
Okay, I don't know Mani.
Okay, that is an easy one to answer then. So, no thoughts on that.
I can think of like Junian the apostate who like took after Constantine, like brought the ancient gods and goddesses back. But like even that I don't know a whole lot about. But like there seems to be a kind of systemization of some people in the ancient world to sort of like he wasn't trying to make all religions one, but he kind of had the way he was practicing ancient Greek religion was nothing like ancient Greeks of like the classical era would have practiced it. So I don't know that I have particular thoughts. I think we see some of these movements early on. We, sort of kind of see them now. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
And I think of Mani. Well, I guess there are a couple different.
Educate me. Yeah.
The Manichaeans, and I was also thinking Mani that associated with Gnosticism. I'm not quite sure which one. this far site is referring to. But I'm assuming that part of her question, their question, I'm assuming female, but is about the fact that you are also open to lots of different ways of talking about the same general figure, person, the words and inspiration and insight
Right.
of this that's attributed to this guy Jesus, and you're open to
Right.
lots of different ways of experiencing or whatever, accessing that. I want to make sure I'm not misspeaking here.
Yeah.
What it is you're thinking and doing. Yes. So there was a question about the Pythian spirit, if that's, yeah. So Pythian, right? Connection to the snakes that are associated with, yes. And so Farsight brought this in for us. Yeah, specifically served, yes, which is what Katy was just discussing in terms of who it might be, you know, kind of a range of people that might be involved with that. So, yes. The Manichaean one. Thank you. At Farsight, I was wondering. Okay, Manny the Manichaean. Oh, and I have all kinds of personal issues with Manichaeans, but right, because they're the ones that Augustine was a part of for a while, right? And that
Oh gosh, I can't even remember. They're, as I recall, like super dualistic.
Yes. and
good, bad, evil, light, dark.
Right? Yeah.
That extends my level of knowledge about them.
And oh goodness, that is almost always, I feel like Kirill brings this comment almost all the time, and I kind of love it. Because yes, the Manichaeans are the ones that gave Augustine his really serious hang up over sexuality, right? The judgment of his sexuality and his particular non-traditional experiences and practices, you could say. And then everybody says that he left being a Manichaean. I don't think at all. I think he continued his repressed,
slapped a Jesus label on it. And
yes,
kept on going.
and yes, and that is why we have such awful ideas about sex, sexuality, marriage, even procreation from him, because of the connection, obviously, to procreation from sex. And so the Manichaeans, I just have a hard time even talking about Manichaeans. I don't want to give him any airtime, but it's appropriate. It's appropriate. Okay. So thank you, Pragmatic Crystal, for your endorsement there.
Nice.
Anything else you wanted to talk about, Katy? It's been really fun to hear a little bit more about your journey, and I'm going to share your website again for people who are joining us now. You can get to, so if you're interested in seeing more about what Katy's up to, would encourage you to come over here to the Soul Forge, because this is where things are shifting a little bit on her work, and therefore the website isn't quite caught up with what she's doing. So the Soul Forge is going to actually take me to a whole different website. Soul Forge Coaching is what she's up to now, the Christo expansive spirituality. So all the people that she's interacting with have this appreciation for this Jesus figure or the Christ figure at the center, the ideas associated with him, the inspiration, the spiritual work going on there. So you can get to Katy's work, katyvalentine.com. And then also in the description is the Facebook group that she runs that we mentioned earlier. I imagine a really interesting small community, 8,000 people. That's all relative, right? That's a pretty large community.
Yeah. We get to know each other though.
Yeah. It's not, you can't really do intimate stuff, but that's really lovely that there are so many people interested in and taking you up on your work. Yeah.
There's one great question. Do we have time for one more?
We do. Absolutely.
Yeah. April just asked a really good
I didn't see it. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like just a minute as you were showing the website. So I wanted to highlight it. So thanks. Yeah. So I can just read that. Yeah. So how do I reconcile faith and morals with scripture that is problematic? So I think that's an excellent kind of question and way to dive, like how do I dive into this? So I would say that all scripture is problematic. Right? It's all problematic. I hadn't met one yet that doesn't have some kind of like problem with it. So
I love it.
So in that sense, it's not really reconciliation, and it's not a picking and choosing. For me, it's looking at the entirety of scripture, what it is and what it's not. And for me, realizing that scripture is not actually God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Scripture is maybe a way that we can get to know what people think or thought about God.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, scripture for me lives right here. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's actually in doing this intuitive work and doing some of this like pluralistic work, has made scripture come alive for me even more, because I also believe that all scripture is written under trauma.
Can you tease
All
that out a little
scripture,
bit? I
yeah,
actually
like
agree with
all
you, and
scripture, yeah, like all nearly, maybe not all,
nearly
but
all. Yeah, I would have put the
95% of
disclaimer.
scripture is written under intense oppression, colonialism, misogyny,
Mhm.
and yet people are still at times expressing a divine relationship that they really treasure,
Hmm.
that they really, really love. And I have respect for that. Even when I don't agree with them and what they have to say, I have a lot of respect for that, that they're trying their damnedest, just like I am, right? Just like I think most of us are. And so some of those, some of the problematic scriptures, ones that come up a lot are ones about divination and like Deuteronomy and Leviticus, not
Do not let a
speaking about
female
like
sorcerer.
necromancy and mediums and witchcrafts and sorceries.
Right.
So I'm just gonna say, like, real quick, if you do a word study on that,
Mhm.
those are very seldom, if ever, defined,
Mhm.
ever.
Mhm.
Like no one describes what those mean,
Mhm.
which means we have no idea what they mean.
True, and or it's at times just the female version of what the prophets were doing.
Mhm.
They do similar
Yeah.
things to what the men who are respected as prophets because they are
Yeah.
seers, right? That's a similar anyway, I don't wanna derail from what the point is you're trying to make, but
Yeah.
I do think that there is an element of
Yeah. There's a gendered element there, and
yes,
there's a
yes,
foreign element.
there is absolutely both. Yeah,
Sometimes they're the foreign women who are doing
yeah,
this stuff.
yeah, right.
For me, I wouldn't say it's reconciling so much as I get the privilege of wrestling with
Mm, hmm,
all of these passages.
mhm,
And that's great because they're not speaking to me as a mandate from on high. They're an invitation for me to wrestle with them
hmm,
and to see, am I in alignment? Am I not? Where is the Christ spirit within me and within these? And how is all this working together?
mhm.
So I'd say it's an ongoing conversation. It's not a closed book. It's a very, very open book for me. So it's a
Nice.
great question. That was a little wordy.
No, 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 that's good, that's helpful. I like being able to relate to what you're saying. Um, let's see. Uh, is it I'm not sure if Granny from Narnia is talking to you. Is this a question for for Katie?
I
Um,
hope not. I don't know what.
okay, okay. I was like, I think
It
that
sounds
might
like a
be
video game, and if
it
so,
does,
I want
doesn't
to
it?
play it,
Yeah, I
but I
know.
don't actually know. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and April's like, "Yep, wasn't that wordy? Come on, we
Okay.
just want." This isn't scholarly. This is a conversation, right?
Yeah.
That's not wordy. You're explaining what you've got going on and your things about it. You also said you said earlier you made a reference to now that you're living in Ireland, you interact with or engage some variations on the theme of the types of spirit? Is that
Yeah.
can you
Yeah.
say I'm curious, so I
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah. You
others
bet.
might be. Can you say more about that without it being
Yeah, and you'll
too
see. If those who go to my website will see the freebie is called Saints, Shamans, Saints, Gods, and Goddesses.
okay.
So I'll talk about a little more there.
Mhm,
And so I guess my theory is,
mm,
it's a working theory right now. We have all of these energies out there, beings, energies, spirits, whatever it is that you want to call them. At heart, I am a monotheist
mhm,
too.
mhm,
And y'all, I'm an ordained minister. I'm a
mhm.
I'm a Jesus fan, right? So I want to make that super, super clear.
Right, right.
Um, and there's all these energies out there. Oh, Catholics might call them saints.
Mhm, mhm,
Protestants did away with all that,
mhm,
unfortunately, and we don't
mhm.
have a good name for it anymore. So I'm trying to reclaim that. But let's say there's an energy out there in the Celtic tradition. Yeah, Bridget. This
Mhm.
is her version as a saint, but she was also a goddess. She was also an ancient Irish goddess. Well, I think gods and goddesses are just names we give to energies
Okay.
that are all part of the same fabric of what I call God, the divine universe.
Okay.
So I'm not worshiping these as gods or goddesses necessarily. I'm recognizing that some people do.
Mhm, mhm,
But I tend to work with them as significant energies who can be really, really helpful to humans.
mm.
So a shorthand way,
Yeah.
I think we're all singing in the same choir, but we're singing pretty different notes.
Okay. Okay.
So I like to work with the different notes as they kind of come to me.
Okay.
They choose me, I choose them. I think it's kind of mutual. In the same way that someone might have a patron saint or like an angel that they like to work with.
Mhm.
So all these different energies are are present. And so lately I've studied shamanism, and that's been part of my shamanic training as well.
Okay. That in terms of the engaging the energy that comes your way or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
And I see people in the Bible doing that too.
Ooh, besides this divination woman, what do you mean? Can you just give me a quick one or two?
Yeah. I mean the witch at Endor
Oh, right.
would be a good one. Jesus when he goes into the desert and like has all the angels that come to him, is also a good one. I think another good one that I like from speaking of the red tent is when Rachel takes the household gods from
Yes.
and sits on them,
Right,
sits on
hides
them as
them.
they're leaving Laban's house. And so we see a lot of this kind of fluidity in the biblical text that weave in and out of it as well.
And interesting, it is often females, but then you just pointed out this thing about Jesus in the desert.
Yeah.
Which is kind of
And I think the prophets too. I mean, we see them, they're drawing on spiritual truths. And they're doing very shamanic things, is what I would say.
They are, and they are very compelled to share the message that they have.
Yeah. And they're like lying on the ground.
Yeah, right. Doing these symbolic gesture things that make
symbolic gestures,
yes.
putting mud on themselves,
hiding their underwears.
Yes. Living in caves, things like that. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Katy. That was both a helpful set of anecdotes and also kind of a fun way to wrap this up. So my guest, Katy Valentine, thank you so much for joining us. I think the people who were able to be here live really enjoyed you and what you had to say, and I certainly did enjoy getting to know you a little bit better. So thanks for being on Storytime today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yes. And for those of you still here watching here with us now or watching later, thank you so much for the various ways that you do support me. I am grateful for all the ways that you, subscribe, like various links, videos, maybe share one with a friend. Also that there's a monthly live conversation that next Thursday, it's the third Thursday of every month. So a week from tonight, we go live with that conversation at 8 p.m. Eastern, and it's for those who are supporting me through Patreon. And we had a great time the first time. I hope some of you will come join us for that next week. But other than that, right, there are lots of ways that you all support me, and I appreciate it all, that you show up, those of you who are able to and want to show up and chat with each other. You show up to some of my other conversations and interviews on other channels. I really appreciate that. And you tell other people about the work I'm doing, as well, not just this YouTube channel, but also my book, Marriage in the Bible, or Permission Granted. I did the audio for Permission Granted, all kinds of things that are out there that I think are helpful for a lot of people. And I appreciate all the ways that you help me spread the word about that. So next week, we'll be back to me talking about picking up where we left off in terms of reading biblical stories in light of the politics in them that the Christian tradition has tended to teach us not to see in them. So that'll be next week. Hope you have a good week. Thanks for being here.